everyone. Welcome back to Skills for Changes. In this session today, we're going to talk about data modeling. So now all of you, data modeling is a concept which is strictly followed when we work on the databases. It is a technique, how do we actually be storing the data, which helps in minimum redundancy of the data, as a result of which we will be occupying less space and we will get better performance when we work with large data sets. So now to understand what exactly data modeling is, so first part of this video is going to focus on to make you all understand what exactly is data modeling, how it is done, and then we will be talking about the part that how do we actually do that same thing practically into the Power BI. So let's jump to my screen and let's have a look at certain things. So I'm sure all of you all would have seen a structure like this. Now, if you see at this structure over here, you can see we have some different tables with us. And these tables are actually connected to each other via a common field. Okay. Now, these kind of structures that you see on my screen right now is exactly what a data modeling is all about. So now let's try to see this thing practically. So for example, I am working on an Excel file. Now, what I do is, what I'm doing over here is I actually, manage a retail store. And now whenever I sell any order, I capture all that information within my Excel file. So I capture the order date, I capture order ID, I capture customer ID, customer name, address of the customer, product ID, product name, sales, supplier ID, and supplier. Now, when I've sold my first order, suppose the order ID is O1. First of all, we're capturing the date. So let me put, say, suppose today's date itself. So like on today's date, we have sold my first order. And I'm putting the order ID as O1. Customer ID I'm saying is C1. The name of the customer is Sam. And he lives on lane 1. The product ID is P1. And that product is iPhone. The sales value is 1. And the name of the supplier is ABC Mobiles. Now, this is the first order that we have sold, and we have captured that information over here in the Excel. Likewise, on the same day, another order was sold. The customer ID was C2. His name was Dave. This customer lives on lane 2. And this customer also purchased the same product. Probably let's keep the product ID as P1. And suppose this customer also purchased the same product P1. Then likewise, third order was sold. And this was purchased by customer C3. His name is Leo. And he lives on lane 3. This customer also purchased the same product and the same supplier is delivering it. Then on the same day, now what happened is, we have sold the fourth order and this time to C1. Now the customer C1, he has actually returned back to the store and his name was Sam, who is living on the lane 1. And this time he purchased a charger for which the customer paid 2,000. And I'm saying that the same supplier is delivering the charges as well. So now all of you, if you take a look at this data right now, can you take a second and think about, is everything okay? Or do you think there could have been some better way, or there are some issues with this data that you look at right now? So probably if you will take a look on this data right now, everyone, the problem that we have over here is we have duplicacy of the data. So if you notice right now, the same supplier name is repeating multiple times. Same product name is repeating multiple times. If the Sam has come to my store 2 times, so I have captured his name 2 times. I have captured the address of this customer 2 times. So in the current state, from the data point of view, there is nothing wrong. Okay. I'm capturing the correct information. But the problem that we are facing over here is we are capturing the same data again and again. So what could be a more, optimized way of storing this data? So probably I would say that, okay, let's make different tables. I will make one table of supplier in which what I will now do over here is I will maintain unique data. So over here, what I'm doing is I am going to capture supplier ID and supplier name only once. So as in this table where we are capturing all the transactions, I really don't need to maintain supplier name again and again. So if you see right now over here in this main table, I have the supplier ID. And in this table for each supplier ID, I am capturing the name of the supplier. And technically, if you see over here right now, we have some connections between these table as well. So if I say insert, and I will just put some images over here, which shows us the connection. See, so supplier ID to supplier ID, we can see over here, there is a common connection between the two tables. Now, on the similar lines, what I can do is I can make a separate table of customer. And here also I will maintain unique data of customer, right? So customer ID is something which is unique for every customer. So now in this table, I don't need to maintain customer name and address multiple times. And here you will notice now that because these two tables have a common field of customer ID. So these two tables are going to be connected via customer ID now. I can just increase the size of this shape. And similarly, I can have a separate table for product. Now I don't need to maintain product name multiple times over here. And again, if we connect these tables now, so product ID is the common field between these tables. So if we take a look at it right now, the data still remains the same, right, everyone? We still have the same data, just that we have broken the data into smaller pieces and we have kept some common field among these tables, which helps them to talk to each other. Now, definitely you might be thinking that, okay, that if I'm going to keep the data into smaller tables, will I be using a merge in the Power BI? No. The data will keep sitting in their own tables only, and we will just be defining some relationships between these tables so that when you start creating some visualizations, you will just be dragging and dropping the fields from the respective tables. So let's have a look at it. Now, even before we start seeing it practically, so we have joins. In the joins, we understood we have inner join, left join, right join, full join. Likewise, when we connect these tables to each other, we have a concept of relationships. Now, relationships, everyone, are basically of four types. We have one-to-one, we have one-to-many, we have many-to-one, and we have many-to-many. Now, what is one-to-one relationship, all of you? Suppose I have two tables, ID and name, and the second table is ID and age. Now, here I'm saying 1, 2, 3. There are three people, and I have captured their names. And we have three people over here, and I have their age. Now, if we all take a look at these two tables, all of you, right? If you take a look at these two tables right now over here, so you all will notice in this table, every ID is coming once. And over here also, every ID is coming once, right? So ID 1 is coming one time over here, one time over here. Similarly, 2 is coming one time over here, one time over here. So these two tables, the common field that we have, for that common field, every data value is present only once. So this type of relationship is called as one-to-one. Now, this is something you will not have to worry much about it, because when we use this thing in the Power BI, it is going to automatically detect these relationships for you. But yes, behind the scenes, how are these being detected? So that background is something we all should be clear on. Now, if you take a look on these two tables, right, let's talk about product table and this main table. Now, over here, in this product table, everyone, every product ID is going to be coming once, right? One table will have only one ID. Like, when you join a company, so you all get employee IDs, or in the colleges, you get the roll numbers. Now, every employee or every student always has a unique roll number or an employee ID. So similarly, every product will have a unique product ID. Now, same product can be purchased by multiple people. So that is why you will see the same product ID can be coming multiple times in this main table. So this type of a relationship where in one table we have the values to be present only once, and the other table the values can be present multiple times, is something which we call it as one to many or many to one. See, one to many and many to one both are same. Okay, so it totally depends upon if you're considering this as the first table and this as the second table, so this will be one to many. And at the other way around, if you're considering this as the first table and this as the second table, this will become many to one. So depending upon which table you have kept first, one to many or many to one is going to be decided. Now, similarly, if you have something two tables, say for example, I am saying I have ID and subject. So I am saying the person whose ID is 1, that person is learning SQL and Excel. The person whose ID is 2 is learning Excel and Power BI. And in the second table, I have the addresses. So I have 1. The person is basically from India and currently is staying in hostel. The person whose ID is 2 is basically from US, is also staying in hostel. So now if you take a look on these two tables, all of you, over here, ID1 is coming multiple times. And similarly, ID1 is coming multiple times over here as well. So this kind of relationship is something which we call it as a many-to-many relationships. Now, many-to-many relationships, all of you, is something which we always avoid because they can lead to certain times, wrong results when you do the calculations. And when you will make this many-to-many relationships in Power BI also, you will see a warning message being shown to you when this is something being done. And now how do we overcome these many-to-many relationship is something which also I will tell you, because over there we take the help of some bridge tables. So now all of you, let's see this thing practically now. How are we going to establish this thing? How we are going to establish this thing into the Power BI? Okay. Now, everyone, this is the file that we are going to use in, and I'm going to put the link of this file in the description box as well. So in this file, we have 4 sheets. If we take a look at it, now this is something, the same data, Superstore data, which we have used in the earlier sessions of, the other topic that we have covered in the past. So where we had the Superstore data. So what I've done is I have modified the same data into smaller tables. See, like I have made a customer data. In this, I have kept customer ID and customer name. I have a product data in which I have kept all the unique product IDs. That product belongs to which category, subcategory, and what is the name of the product. We have region data. Here we have kept postal code. Now that postal code belongs to which city, country, state, and region. And then we have fact sales. Now in the sales table, you will see all the transactions that are happening, all the orders that we are selling. So in that, what we have shown is that, we have an order ID. This order was purchased by which customer ID? Now, if I want to see customer ID, so customer ID is something, the information for the customer ID is given in the customer data. Now, similarly, you have the postal code at from which location that order was purchased. And a postal code is given to me. So I can find all the connected data in the region data, like based on postal code. I can identify that what was the city, state, country, and region. And similarly, we have product ID. Now, based on product ID, we can identify what was the name of the product, that product belonged to which category, which subcategory. So all that information is given to us in the product data table. Now, all of you, since I've told you in the very starting that this concept of data modeling is something which comes from databases. Now, there are some terminologies also which we use, although they are not, like something which you have to be fully aware of. But yes, it's a good to know practice because this data modeling is like a standardized, implementation that is followed on the databases now. Now, if you take a look on this customer data, right? Now, this customer data table doesn't have any measurable data, right? Measurable data like sales, quantity, profit. I do not have any measurable data in this. Now, the tables in which you have only categorical data, like you have the customer ID and you have the customer name. So these tables have a proper name, which we call them as dimension tables, right? These tables are basically called as dim tables as a short form or a dimension table as a full form. The tables in which you have only categorical data, like customer ID, customer name, product table, product ID, product name, category, subcategory. The table in which you have the measurable data, right? Like which we have talked about, this table over here, in which we have the information regarding, what was the sales value, how much was the quantity, how much was the profit. So where we have all this information with us, now everyone, this table is something which we call it as a fact table, right? This is something which we call it as a fact table. A fact table is a table which has the measurable information, like I would like to calculate how much was the sales for the different categories, how much was the sales for the different regions. So categorical information comes from your dimension tables, and measurable data is something which comes from your fact tables. And fact tables and dimension tables are connected to each other via common field, which is ID columns. Now, these ID columns also have the terms like primary keys, foreign keys, which we will not deep dive into much as of now, because the implementation of a practical implementation of primary key, foreign key is something which is done majorly in the databases, not in the Power BI. So in the Power BI, you have to understand relationships, what are the common fields, and yes, good to know about which one is a dimension table, which one is a fact table. So now I hope everyone is clear on the data, right? Like what data we have and what data modeling is and why are we doing it. So now with this, let's jump to the Power BI and let's see this thing practically. So now I'm going to open up my Power BI screen. All right. So I have opened a blank Power BI file as of now. The first step definitely is to bring that data into the Power BI system. And for that, we simply click on Excel workbook. And we are going to load the data. So now, like whenever you are loading the data, now since if you have already seen the previous videos where we talked about Power Query and data cleansing, so please make sure, right, that once you are loading the data, you are very much clear that the data is cleaned. So if I click on customer data, so let's see the preview over here, and we can clearly see headers are something which will need some correction. So my headers of now. So we will have to spend a second, to clean that data up. But let's do it all together, all of you. So if I click on fact sales, so I can see everything looks okay. If I click on the product data, over here also I can see we will have to first of all correct the headers in this. And in the region data, so everything looks okay too. So what we will do over here as the first step, everyone, is we are going to directly click on transform data. So now we have come to this Power Query Editor screen, all of you. Now in this, I'll go back first to my customer data and I'll make sure that my headers are corrected out. And for that, we will use this step of use first row as header. So if I just click on this, and we can notice the first row has been converted to a header. Fact sales was all good. In product data also, we could see the headers were not coming fine. So here as well, I will have to say use first row as head. Once we are done with the changes, so we are going to now click on close and apply. And now we will all notice, all of you, the cleaned data is what we will flow into the Power BI. The Power BI is going to take some while time to load this data up. Because what happens now is, because once the data will be loaded, you will actually see Power BI is going to run its automatic algorithm of building the model as well for you. So here we can see now the data has been loaded. So now everyone, when we talk about data modeling, okay, so data modeling is something which is taken care of by a component called as Power Pivot in Power BI. Like in the very first session, we talked about the components, Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View. So over here, we are going to talk about Power Pivot. So if you click over here on the model view, right? If you see this option right now, this is where the modeling in the Power BI is done. So if I just click over here, so we can see now all the 4 tables that we have loaded, they will be visible to us. And I can just zoom out a little bit so that we can see all the 4 tables in a more comfortable manner. And here we have. Now see, Power BI was very smart enough to create this automatic relationships for us. Okay. So as we can see over here, fact sales and customer data, the common field between them is customer ID. So if I just hover on this line between them, see if you hover on this line between them, it highlights that the 2 tables are connected to each other by customer ID. These 2 tables are connected to each other by postal code. They are 2 connected to each other by product type. Also, if you take a look over here, everyone, there are some icons. Like if you see star and here it's written 1. Now it simply signifies that, in the customer data, every customer ID is coming once. Whereas in fact sales, the same customer ID can be coming multiple times. So this makes it a one-to-many relationship. Same way, this is also a one-to-many and this one is also a one-to-many. Now, when the column names are same among the tables, so Power BI automatically detects those relationships for you. But you have to make sure, everyone, that those relationships are correct. In case, you figure it out, probably there were more than 1 columns which had a similar name, but you wanted some other relationship. So I can just right click on this line and I can say delete the relationship. So if you delete the relationship, see, the two tables are now not going to be connected to each other. Likewise, let me remove the other relationship as well. And I will remove the third one also. So what we will technically do over here right now is we will see how we make these relationships manually. To make these relationships manually also, all of you, you just have to drag customer ID. So you can, drag it any which ways. Table A to B or B to A, both are same. So if I drag customer ID to, you have to make sure you directly drop it on the customer ID. See, now it tells you that this table has opened up, that you are building a new relationship. Customer data is the first table. Fact sales is the second table. And these two tables are connected to each other on the basis of customer ID. And here we can also see that this relationship, which is called as cardinality as well, is going to be one-to-many. If you will just interchange the tables, that from here, if you choose fact sales as the first table and customer data as the second table, the cardinality will change. It will become many to one. So I'll just click on save because I know now that this relationship is correct. On the similar lines, I'm going to make my postal code to postal code relationship. You can have a cross look over here. This is also going to be a one-to-many. I click on save. And then we are going to make product ID to product ID. So we can see all the three relationships is something we have recreated manually as well by dragging and dropping the fields from here to there. Now, once all these tables are connected, now you can very easily create your visualizations and the joins and, the, sending of the data from one table to another is something which will be taken care of by Power BI in the back. So now you don't have to worry about which join to use, when to use. You just directly drag and drop the fields from here and there, and you will be able to work with it. Now, before we go into the visualization part, all of you, so basically now what happens over here, everyone, is when you, connect these tables to each other, when you make these relationships, now there are two more terminologies that come into the picture. One is called as star schema, and one is called as snowflake schema. Now, a star schema is the one, everyone, where what happens is you have one centralized fact table, and that fact table is connected to each dimension table, right? Dimension table, like we talked about, the table which has only categorical data. Now, this type of a schema is called as a star schema, where every dimension table is connected to the fact table. And similarly, we have some more advanced modeling technique as well, where you might have another dimension table. Now, I'll show you this example practically as well. Just right now, I'm showing you a small example over here for your reference. Now, suppose there was one more dimension table. Now, this dimension table was connected to customer table, which in itself is a dimension table. And then this was connected to the fact table. Now, typically, if you see, this dimension table is not connected to the fact table. It is connected to another dimension table. So this type of a schema is something which we call it as a snowflake schema. So now, focusing on the star schema for now, which we have with the current set of data with us. Now what I can do is I can simply go and create my visualizations. So I'll come over here. Suppose I want to make a simple chart. I pick a column chart. And I would like to showcase subcategory wise. So if I pick subcategory from the product data, and I'm going to pick sales from the fact sales. And we will see our charts are going to get created. So subcategory is coming from one table, sales is coming from another table. And here you will see this chart has been created for us. Now, this is what the benefit of data modeling is, all of you. So this was the first part of this data modeling. So in the next session, we will be talking about what is a snowflake schema, and we will be talking about a very important concept, which is called as directions, right? So stay tuned for the next part of this, but I hope you all were able to understand the concept, and please do this thing practically on your machine as well. So see you in the next session, everybody. Thank you.